Hi, my name is Dilcia Barrera. I'm a film curator and I work at Sundance as a film programmer. And I'm here with Ivete Lucas and Patrick Bresnan. We will be hosting a Q&A for Pahokee. It's a very special time as it is currently having its virtual theatrical release nationwide. So we hope you enjoy the film and get to know the filmmakers behind the film. But first off, I wanted to kick off maybe by talking about how we met, because I have a very clear memory of how I met you two. And just a little background, when someone gets into Sundance, a couple things happen. First, we call the filmmakers to their cell phones or their home phones, and we let them know that they got into Sundance. And then a series of things happen, including different people approaching the filmmakers, asking for contacts and pictures and a lot of information. But the first thing that we put together is an event called Directors Orientation. And usually it takes place in New York and Los Angeles. And we invite all the filmmakers, though we don't always expect filmmakers from other parts of the country or even the world to attend because it's not in their hometown. But Patrick and Ivete came to Los Angeles all the way from Austin. They drove over, and I remember seeing Patrick sitting down by himself away from the entire crowd, and my colleague Mike Plant and I came over, and we were like, who are you? And then he introduced himself, and then he introduced us to Ivete. And it was just really surprising to see you guys come all this way from Texas for this first meet with the Sundance programmers, and that really stuck in my head. And I would have never thought that from then on we were going to have this extensive relationship, but it really was an impression for me that time when we first met.
Well, it really meant a lot to us to have our film at Sundance. And I mean, when I heard for the first time, I mean, when we got the call, I cried. I was like, because we were living outside of the mainstream, you know, making our films, like basically the two of us. And so finally to have some recognition was amazing. I also remember something very well from like talking to you, Dilcia, which was the second time we were at Sundance with the short. It was with the rabbit hunt. And we were talking to you, and you said to me, we don't usually invite filmmakers twice, but I think that this film, like, you pushed yourselves more, and that's why you're here. And I was really glad to hear that from you. We always are trying to push ourselves more, you know, with the form and with what we're doing in cinema. So
yeah, that's definitely true. The first time we met was for the short, The Send-Off, in 2016. You guys finished it in 2015, and that was first an introduction to Pahokee. I had never heard of this region. I had never seen these rituals and this community, and it was the first step or look that you guys gave the world of this place. But then there's a backstory to that. Can you please explain how you got to know Pahokee? How did you guys connect with this community, and what stood out from it that made you guys want to start documenting?
Sure. So my family is originally from New York, and my mom passed away in 1997, and my dad kind of immediately fled the Northeast to Florida. And so that kind of became our new home. And I had been really involved in high school with Habitat for Humanity, and I set up punk shows and did a lot of kind of documentary photography. And when we got to Florida, I was really not very interested in kind of like the beach culture, the culture closer to the coast. And I started driving out to Lake Okeechobee and trying to find communities to work with there on, you know, small kind of rebuilding, roofing projects. And that kind of started this love affair with photographing the Glades. Like every time I would drive there, it was on fire. and it was just so shocking and also cinematic. And I started to kind of make friends in the community, and I always wanted to make films and didn't know how to really do it until I met Ivete in 2008. So I started bringing Ivete to Central Florida, and that was when the short films started to come together, the ideas for them.
Yeah, and we met while I was still living in Mexico. I started my career in Mexico, and I was doing more fiction work with real people in real settings. And so when Patrick and I met, he was like, I want to make some documentaries, and he pulled me into that world, and I really loved it. I really loved the raw quality of being in somebody's bedroom and something happening in front of you. And so he took me to Florida, and I kind of felt somehow more at home in Florida than anywhere else I'd been in the United States. I could relate to people in Pahokee in a way that I wasn't able to in other places. And I was also very struck by like the narrative of the Hispanic community there as well. And so, you know, through that fiction, voice, and art background and all that, we decided to start making movies there. And we started with that short film, The Send-Off, which was about prom, about a ritual that is very culturally rich and sort of what we wanted to be, you know, showing like American culture in a different way that hadn't been shown before.
Yeah, it's very clear that you guys had spent a lot of time and almost built this relationship with this community. I mean, you guys made The Send-Off, which not only won an award at South by Southwest, but you know, then the Rabbit Hut came after, which also won 20 awards around the world. You guys made Roadside Attraction, which premiered at TIFF. And then there's Skip Day, which premiered and won the biggest award at Cannes. But I think why Pahokee, the feature, stood out for me, and the new element that came out and the new dimension that you guys explored in Pahokee, like you mentioned, is the Hispanic or the immigrant community. And I was very moved by this story because it is something new that was not expecting and also not aware of. But obviously a community that is small within another small community must be, and especially this community which is conservative, must be weary of outsiders. How did you cultivate this relationship? What entailed with it, not only Hokabed, one of the main protagonists in the film, but her family, what entailed with you personally coming in and gaining their trust?
I think it has to do with, you know, building relationships before we even start filming. Like we spent a lot of time in Pahokee. Patrick had been coming for many years before he met me. And then I would come with him and he'd take photos, and the photographing led to prom, to the film about prom, because he was invited to photograph prom. And so we already had friendships there, and then we made the short films. And so we stayed there a long time, and we were able to see things that that are not traditionally displayed about a community like Pahokee, or about a community in general. And so one of the things that people in Pahokee would complain about is that when they get any attention, it's usually about a shooting, like an act of violence, or the football. And they would say, we are so much more than that story, you know, and this is why our film was not solely about football. And the other thing that we could clearly see is that it's a predominantly Black community, but it's not just the Black community. It's like about half of the community is Hispanic. And so that narrative had not been shown either. And I could relate to that, to the narrative of the immigrant, but I could also relate. Like my family were working in farms, and my mom was the first person in her family to go beyond second grade and then go to college. And so that story still repeating itself in a country like the United States, where we don't think about those stories at all, resonated with me. And so I started asking my friends, like, okay, introduce me to some Latinos here, because I want to hear their stories. And finally, Kyria, one of our main characters, introduced us to Jochebed, and Jochebed took us to the taco shop, and we were like, this is a beautiful story. So
yeah, Jochebed is wonderful. I often think of her when I'm watching even TV shows, because she has a lot of elements of that I hardly even get to see in mainstream media. But she's brown, and she is a child of an immigrant, and she holds these values, and it's just really exciting and a breath of fresh air to see her story on screen, in particular, because she becomes part of this larger community and these larger traditions that are American. So her story as an immigrant is part of the American, structure. But yeah, so then there's, like you mentioned, there's so many parts of Pahokee that could be turned into features in themselves, including like the football, including like these traditions and these rituals. And I love that you guys titled it Pahokee and not like senior year or the send off. Again, you guys could have used that title, because it represents more than just these students and this 1 year. It's a larger community. And that's clearly something that comes through in the film, how the community together is resilient, and what they do as a one unison to further their not only children, but their own stories and their narrative in the world. But then I wanted to talk about actually the football element. There was a controversy that year. Did you guys know that was going to happen? How did you guys navigate telling the story of these students, but also continuing with the narrative of this bigger thing, which was the football games, the football elements, the year within that school year?
Yeah, the football really was difficult in the editing room to deal with, because we recorded 16 games, and the reason we did that is because they never lost. Like, we'd be like, we have to film this game because they might lose, and that will really show an interesting side of the community and the kids. And they just kept winning. But we truly didn't want to make a football film. Like, I didn't like football in high school. I hated the jocks, but at the same time, we had so much respect for the kids, because we saw them every weekend, every Friday, giving everything. And that was truly like powerful. So the football story really, it just happened. And that's what's amazing in documentary, is you put yourself in a place and then life unfolds, and it's really, it's like documentary is high risk, because, we could have been kicked out of the community, or they could have lost a bunch of games, but they won every game, and they won the state championship. And like about a month after they won, we started seeing on Facebook, like, where's my state championship ring? Where's my state championship jacket? And we started to realize that something was wrong. And they played an all-white team. Like the championship game, when we would go to the other sideline, it felt like being at a Trump rally. And one of the students at Pahokee, his parents had been very sick, and he had to move and drop out of high school several times with his parents as they moved to be closer to hospitals. And a coach researched the Pahokee team and found out that this one student may have been ineligible, and they filed a protest against their loss, and the state football association took it seriously, and the kids were stripped of their championship. And you know, it's a community where there's not many lawyers. There's, you know, the high school.
The high school doesn't have the resources to fight it, you know, significantly. So
yeah, so it was truly tragic to see that, because it meant so much to the kids in the band. It meant so much. The Hispanic kids were all in the audience cheering for the football team. It really brought people together in a special way.
Well, I think the thing about football to us is like, definitely we were going to include it because it's one of the ways that the kids are able to access a college education, and they take it very seriously. But it's also this ritual that brings everybody together in the community. And so like there's not that much to do in Pahokee. There's no movie theaters. There were like 2 restaurants when we were there. And so every night everybody goes to the high school to watch the game. And so the way we approached it was, we are going to record this not like an ESPN show. We're going to do this as like a ritual that includes everyone and that everybody participates in. So while Patrick was filming the games themselves, I was filming the cheerleaders and the band and the public, you know, and everybody coming together to play a role in these kids rising above, you know, their circumstances. And so initially that was our thought. We didn't know they were going to win every game. But we certainly, one of the things that we did was we shared footage with them. Patrick would come home, we would shoot all day long and be very tired. And then Patrick the next day would make a little reel and post it on Facebook so that they could see it. And so they were very highly motivated, and they won. And yeah, the thing about these real life stories is that you never know where it's going to take you. And so this twist with the football, we didn't know was going to happen, and we were there to capture it. And the same thing with Nigeria and not winning. Like you know, it's just part of life. Like we could have set our hopes into these stories and just do that story, but it says so much more when you follow a story and it doesn't result in what you want it to result in. That makes sense.
Yeah. And speaking about just shooting and capturing, you guys mentioned that you shot all 16 games. You were there for all the events. Obviously, you guys are a partnership in many levels, in many ways. But it's really interesting to see the different roles you guys play, not only as producers, as camera persons, as directors, and how you interchange that. And in particular, Ivete, you know, you've been working with film for many, many years. And do you want to describe some of the challenges and also, you know, some of the tasks that you took on while making this and making all of these pieces in the last years?
Well, I think we're both very passionate about making films and about telling stories of people who don't generally get their share in the media space. And so we just we're both very DIY. We just kind of learned to do things ourselves, so we didn't have to depend on money or other people to help. And that's one of the things that brought us together as a couple. We're also married. And that makes it easier for us to just pick up and move and live in a place and do the things that we need to do to make a film and to capture people's stories. And so to me, I'd say as a woman too, when I was a young girl and I wanted to make films, I was, you know, I wasn't taken very seriously. And I also was afraid of picking up a camera and shooting. I thought that, you know, the guys, like, they had cameras and I didn't. And eventually I picked up a camera and I realized that I could do it really well. And then I decided that if I wanted to make my films, I needed to learn every single part of the process so that I didn't have to rely on anybody to do it. And that's really why I went to grad school for film, so that I could. And so that proved very useful for us. Patrick was a photographer, and he was making videos, like candid videos, before we met. And so what ended up happening is that even though I shoot very well, he's very gifted in that. And so he shoots, I shoot camera B, I do sound, and then I edit the stuff, and we produced together, and we had an additional producer, Madeline, who helped us from California, and she would come to big events to help coordinate that. But it is very DIY.
Yeah, I do a lot of stand-up comedy. I think that the kids really liked us because, I mean, I look like I smoke a lot of pot, and I don't, but I'm happy to play that role for the kids and make kids laugh. And I think for the kids, it was really enjoyable to have us around because we weren't their parents, we weren't their teachers. I mean, most white people that the kids were interacting with were the police or their principal, and were these, you know, figures of authority and figures to fear. And we really wanted to be there in service of their community, whether it was telling jokes or taking kids out to eat or buying Gatorades at the gas station or pizzas. Like, we really wanted to give something back to them, and we wanted to find a way to amplify their voice. You know, I think there's a real desire, which we share as well, for communities to tell their own stories, but storytelling is so difficult. Like, I'm in my 40s. It's taken me 20 years to figure out how to make a feature film. And it's a lot to hoist onto a community to say, tell your own story. But what we believe they need to tell their own story, so we saw ourselves as partners in telling that story. We could go home at night and write for grants, and we could buy cameras on credit cards, and, you know, we could go out there and be Peter Pan and try and bring these things back to the community. And Pahokee was really a chance for us to tell a story with the kids. You know, we would go to Palm Beach and we would ask people for their old iPhones, so the kids had iPhones to shoot with. So that was really, that was a role that we were able to fulfill educationally and in partnership with the community.
I think the key aspect of the work that we do together is that it is part of our lives. Like, this is our lives, and it's not just a film when we do something like this. And we moved to Pahokee together, and we made it completely like every day we were doing this. And I need to want to have that experience in my life to do it. And so just making the film is not enough. It's important to make friends that last. It's important to do something else, not just the film, with the time that we have. So even being there for the kids as friends and mentors, like, I didn't have that growing up. And when I was their age, I could have used some help from some older people. So all of this was important to us.
Yeah, and that was very clear to me at the premiere, because everyone was there. You guys brought all the kids and some of the community with you. Do you want to talk a little bit about their first reactions, not only to the film, but also the experience of having their film premiere on a world stage like Sundance? And also the fun parts of them, you know, hanging out in the snow.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's amazing. After the premiere, so many people in the audience came up to the kids and they were hugging them. And they were telling them how moving their story was. And Junior especially, people were telling him what an amazing parent he is. And Junior's dad is not around, and his mom works the night shift, and nobody had ever told him, I mean, we told him, but had told him that he was an amazing parent and that they were proud of him. And so that moment of the kids sharing their life with a room of 300 people they had never met, like that hour after the screening was just magical for them. I mean, none of them had ever known that people cared about them outside of their aunts and uncles and teachers. Like, to go into a room of mostly white people in a theater in Park City and have them tell you, like, your life is amazing, you're amazing. I mean, that was incredible.
I also want to say that I had been to festivals before and seen other documentary filmmakers talking about the films and the work, and they get asked questions about, you know, the community or the people that they're with. And I always thought, like, wow, what a weird position to be in, to represent a community when you're not that person. And I, like, early on, even when we had the send-off, which was a short, and we didn't have any money, we said, we're not going without the kids. Like, if somebody in the audience has a question about the kids' lives, they need to be there to answer that question. And it's a great thing for them too, to be able to represent their community, having always seen themselves as ordinary people. And so that was super important to us. So we actually had, like, set some money aside. We wrote for grants to take them to as many places as we could. And eventually they were able, the kids and the parents were able to go to places without us. So that was an important part of our statement as filmmakers too, is that we need to provide opportunities for people to represent themselves.
Mm-hmm. And obviously they had a good time as well.
Oh yeah.
I do remember the send-off with the children, the images of them seeing snow for the first time were pretty brilliant.
Yeah, and I think too, like I said, you know, this filmmaking for us is not just an industry and a business, it's our lives. And going to a big festival with our first film like Sundance, it's a little nerve-wracking, and having the kids with us made the experience so much better and so much more fun. And we went what do you call that? The tubing. We went tubing with them.
I think that the kids they're so responsible, and we brought two lovely young girls to camp, and there was wine everywhere. And I mean, we would be at parties and they were 18 and they're like, oh, we can't drink, Mr. Patrick. We're not drinking. And I was like, well, it's France. It's legal. And they're like, no. I mean, the kids that we've worked with are incredible. I mean, yeah. I think that's been for us, like, they've taught us so much about being parents and overcoming odds. And it's been amazing to bring them to festivals and see them take the film over.
I know there's going to be a Q&A with them, so if people are interested, they should tune in with that. But is there something you guys want to update us on them and how they're doing? I know it's been a while since you guys shot it, and it's been a while since you premiered at Sundance. So now that the world is going to get to see this film, it's been a huge time since then.
Yeah, and people always want to know what happened next. So I can say that, I mean, Jochebed, just from seeing her graduation, you know, her graduation speech, you know, she's very determined to do exactly what she was saying she was going to do. So right now she's in college at the University of Florida, doing super well. She's also at a sorority, enjoying being an American girl. It's like a Latina sorority, so they're also very proud of their grades, by the way. And she's studying to be a teacher, to work with underserved communities, because she was so inspired by her teachers. And Who else?
BJ, who is a football player, he also got a scholarship to FAMU University, and he's the captain and starting center. We've shown the film on the other side of the county, and I think one thing the film's really been able to do is build a bridge between two communities that don't really interact very much. So there was a guy who had a big finance company who went up to BJ after the film and said, I want to give you an internship. You know, I was so impressed by your leadership and what you accomplished with your team. And we've never had a young student of color in our office, and we want you to be the first. Junior, he struggled. He had a son, like right as the movie premiered, and he's been studying nursing, and he's currently working in construction, so he has work, and yeah, he's very positive and very committed to his kids.
And Nigeria went to college in Tallahassee and realized how hard it is to work and maintain herself while going to college and paying for this education. And I think that realization also came with like this notion of like, am I really doing what I wanted to do, and is nursing what I want to do? And so she decided to stop for a while and have a job and try to sustain herself. And she's doing really well at that. She has a job with a big company as the security person at the front door. She has benefits. She has health insurance. She just bought a car, and she pays for her rent. She lives by herself, and she's very proud of that. So we're still super in touch with the kids.
Are they excited about the release, or are they looking forward for this part of their life to kind of move on, for them to grow up? Because it's interesting to keep seeing themselves as students when they're trying to be adults.
Yeah, I think they love it. I mean, I think when you get into the real world, to be able to step back into high school for a little bit and remember how simpler life was. Yeah, I think they really remember it fondly, and Hokebed is in charge of social media for her national sorority, so she sent this out to all of the sorority branches across the country. So she's so excited for people to know where she's from, and BJ has sent it out to his entire football team. You know, there's a lot of pride that people from Pahokee have and where they come from.
There's something about sharing something with other people about your life that has been so personal and private to you, and means something to other people. And I think that has been a thing that they can do. Like for Hokebed, she was able to, so the American Embassy in Mexico City hosted a screening of the film. And because they were, and it's true, because they were concerned with what the president has been, saying to people, and that image of the United States. So they hosted this screening, and they brought Hokebed over to have that screening, and her grandparents were able to come and watch the film because her grandparents lived there. And she doesn't see her grandparents at all. Like, she hadn't seen them in 4 years in that occasion. It had been 2 years again since she's seen them. And now she's like sharing this experience with a Mexican audience. And it was a lot of young kids who were going to come to the United States to learn English. And it was very meaningful to her. So I think that those things, make it worthwhile to share something so personal.
And speaking about sharing, so this is considered a virtual theatrical release. How can people spread the word? And obviously, if they love it and they want other people to see it, what's the best way to go about not only speaking about it, but actually watching it?
So people can go to PahokeeFilm.com, and there'll be a little button on there that says virtual theatrical, and they can click there and find a local cinema that they want to support. The film is playing through 70 independent cinemas across the United States and the UK and Canada. And yeah, it's such an honor to know that we can still sell tickets and support these brick and mortar institutions that have given us so much. So
it's amazing to be a part of doing something different in our industry right now, and everybody's trying to stay alive and continue doing what we love. And so yeah, so we're excited.
I know, I'm really excited too. So then when someone clicks on a theater, you're supporting that theater in particular.
Yeah.
You take, so there's a link to the film, and then there's a code, like there's a list of codes, and you choose the theater you want to support, and you take that code and you plug it in, and it'll give you a discount. And that's how you do it.
Yeah, and half of the ticket sale goes to the theater. So
what if someone really wants to see the shorts? Where can they see the short films?
Yeah, so all of the short films are on the Pahokee Film website. So you just hit previous work and you can watch them all for free. And we've donated all the shorts to a number of the theaters. So some of the theaters are broadcasting the shorts as well.
That's right. And we are continuing to work in Southern Florida in our next project, which is going to be a surprise. Not in Pahokee, it's another place.
Yeah.
I wanted to add something from your question about, being a Latina filmmaker in this area, because I think that my experience as being an immigrant twice in my life, I was first in Brazil and moved to Mexico when I was 9, and then from Mexico to the United States. I think that it taught me to really listen and to really understand that there are various ways of doing things, and my way is not the only way, nor the right way sometimes. And I think we were both we really love observational cinema. We love the direct cinema is more the correct word. We love the direct experience of being with someone in their lives, but we were very sensitive to honoring the particularities of the people in the community that we were working with, and we never wanted to see them as subjects that were being studied. And so for us, it was very important to be able to see the big events as a system in a way, but really to be able to be very close with people in a place and get personal and really become friends, which would help us tell the story better. And so I think that experience really informed the way that we approach the aesthetic of the film and the storytelling.
Yeah, that definitely comes through in many ways. And in particular, your own experience, not only as a woman, as an immigrant, as a Latina, I think serviced in particular the stories in this film. And it's one of the many reasons why I love the film and why everyone at Sundance loves the film. And we're so honored that you guys selected us essentially to premiere the film. And thank you guys so much for even inviting me to do this. And I'm just looking forward to all the other things you guys have planned, because I know it's not only this next documentary, but narrative film and baby and so many things. It's endless. So I'm sure there's going to be so much more to come. So everyone, thank you for joining me. If you guys have any other questions, if you guys want to join live Q&As and ask the filmmakers more questions, please visit PahokeeFilm.com.